Alright, let's see what this is. This email from Zimmy. Sure you've already got emails about this too. But Joker at Great Adventures trains collided on the lift hill? Not sure how it happened, but I just wanted to let you know, keep an eye out for more information on the event. Zimmy, huh? Let's see what this picture is. Oh, holy crap. Ho.
Now get ready. Here we go.
Great adventure. What are you guys doing out there? Come on. We're all trying to get into the off season here, and you're all left, right, center, willy-nilly crashing trains into each other on a lift hill? I believe everyone's reaction is, how does that happen? How does that happen? Holy crap. That's why people were contacting me. I looked out in the morning about it because I woke up to a slew of emails over this thing. It's like, so I was looking online at Reddit and everything else, trying to see if people had better accounts of actions. Oh my gosh. Wait a minute. Welcome to the Ryan Ryman channel. How the heck are you guys doing today? If this is your first time here, like and subscribe. If you want to see more stuff like this, I try to do reaction videos whenever possible. But mainly I explain how rides work and that sort of stuff. So, alright, for this out at Great Adventure, they did something. And I was like, I've got to figure out what happened to this. So I dug up a bunch of videos and a bunch of pictures, all of my own. The original one was actually sent to me on an email, and it has a lot of, I don't want to use the picture too much. It's got a lot of whitewash on it, and it's not the best quality. Of course, it's really hard when you're taking pictures in a park of something that is dark and not supposed to be illuminated. But they did their best. They took a picture with Santa in the foreground here and sent it to me. But the better one that I want to use is from Coaster Hub. And that picture is more, I would say, cinematic. It's just got some better quality, so I want to use that one for this particular video. Alright, so what are we looking at? We are looking at, well, right here on the screen, we're looking at two coaches on a S&S free spin that are both on the lift hill at the same time. And people ask, how does that happen? I had the same question. How does that happen? Because the chain can't lift two coaches at the same time. It's mechanically impossible because the chain on these things... Let me run a quick video here. So this is a vertical lift hill, and we'll just go ahead and run. So this is a coach going up the lift hill. Pretty standard. But it's being lifted by a lifting attachment that's on the chain itself. So right now, the other one can't even be picked up. So it comes off here, and then that lifting attachment continues to go around. If I back it up and pause it right here, you can actually see the lifting attachment right there. That's this little guy right here. That's the lifting attachment. So that guy is actually inside right here in this area, and it's actually lifting this coach up right now. So what we'll do is we'll wind that back just a little bit so you can see it a couple times. I'll go forward. I'll just play it, reverse it a little bit. Okay, you see it go down right there? Come back, we'll do it again. You see it right here. There it is right there. It's coming down, and now it's out of frame. Okay, so that is a very critical thing with this particular instance, because it's like knowing that there's only two of those on the chain, as they're going, the one that's lifting the coach, the other one passes itself going down. I made a whole video on vertical lift hills. Go in my catalog and find it, watch it if you don't know anything about a vertical lift hill. But there's only two of these pushers or catches, dogs. They're actually just, it's just called an attachment. It's a chain attachment. Doesn't sound very fun though. But there's two of these attachments on that chain at the same time. So right now downstairs, this other coach, the other coach that's waiting, can't even be picked up at all. Like, it's not even a possibility. So I was really stumped. My first thought was that somehow the coach that was on top was being lifted up, and then somehow the lifting attachment, it would have been on the train, broke, and then the chain continued to go. And these have anti-rollbacks on them, so it will just stop right there and can't go any further. So I thought maybe that's what happened, and then it went over, and then somehow they would have had to, because the chain would have reset on top, but none of the proximity sensors would have seen the coach go by. So you would have basically gotten a ghost train in that block. So you'd have a train sitting down in the ready, or the block, we'll call it, I don't know what it is, 1, and then the lift hill is block 2 to the top. So that chain would have got to its ready position and then thrown out all sorts of faults and said, none of my proximity sensors saw the train go by, but the dog's now back, or the lifting attachment's now back, so something is seriously wrong. And it probably would have kept the lift hill occupied, because it still was. And then I'm like, and then they had to dispatch a second train into an occupied block? Or maybe they could reset the block, where you have a stuck train in a reset block. That is the exact same thing that happened on Smiler, if you remember that. They had a physical train in a block and then reset it, sent the next train forward. Smiler. So I was thinking, I don't think that was right. So I have a buddy that has constructed these rides before, has gone all over, looked at multiples, operates them, does everything else. So I contacted him and I'm like, hey, what do you think? I explained my theory, which is like really far-fetched, honestly. Where somehow something broke and let go, then they cleared the block. And his response was, well, I think it can be done in manual mode. Okay, so let's talk about manual modes real quick. So when a ride's in manual mode, it lets you do a lot of things to it out of the ordinary that in automatic mode you normally can't do. Some manufacturers, it all depends how they build their program. Some manufacturers actually wipe out parts of the block system in manual mode. It's one of the reasons why manufacturers say you should never operate a ride with people on it in manual mode, because there's too much room for failure. Some manufacturers don't give you that much leeway. Like a lot of manufacturers, even though you're in a manual mode, the block system is still 100% active and it won't let you do anything. Other manufacturers, it's like once the coach approaches that block system, it stops it and it says, hey, you can't go any further. But then a lot of times if you're like, I want to go further, it'll let you go further. So those things, they say in the manuals to use extreme caution and care when moving vehicles around and stuff, because you can run vehicles into each other and all sorts of other things. So I wanted to do a comparison now to where these rides are actually fairly the same. Like most of these S&S free spins, the size varies a little bit, the shape kind of doesn't. So they're pretty much the same when you look at it. So I wanted to compare some pictures to where that thing was and versus where we find it on a daylight picture, because the dark is really hard to get in there. So let's look at that now. Okay, I'm using this photo by Coaster Hub and this one on the right, and this is just my video on the left that I've paused. So what I've done here is I've taken my video and paused it right about the area where I think that other coach is. It's a little bit off, but I see this lower coach on the Coaster Hub video right here, and the coach is kind of in the same spot. I mean, it's off by about 2 feet. But what you see here is that with this lower coach here, this is the one that's being lifted, the pusher attachment, which is 180 degrees out on the chain. Remember, they're opposite of each other. When the two pushers pass each other dead center, that is the middle of the chain. When you rotate those two pushers where they're right next to each other, there's two lifting attachments right next to each other, that's the middle of the chain. You can mathematically measure the links. It's the same on both sides. So what we have here on my picture on the left is the pusher is right about here in the coach. It's kind of hard to see because from different video angles, you can't really see where the pusher is actually hooked onto the coach. It literally has a wheel in the front and just grabs it and lifts the thing up like that. But the other one is right here above this cross member. See in this photo over here, we have this cross member right there. That's that same exact support between the two. And there's the lower coach and the pushers right there. Now I've taken a different video that I froze from a different park, and I've positioned the coach fairly in the same spot. There's the cross member right there. There's the lower coach. It's right about the same place. There's the upper coach, or upper spoon. That's where you sit. That's called the spoon. And I wanted to see where the pusher was. Well, the lifting attachment or pusher is right here. It's high up on the other side. So what I was doing, I was curious. I was like, how did this happen, right? We all still have the same question. How did this happen? Did they bump two trains into each other? And it took me a little while to figure it out. And I was like, no, they didn't bump two trains into each other. Ryan, what'd they do if they didn't bump two trains into each other? They sent two trains out on the lift hill at the same time. Still, everyone's brain, nope, you can't do that. You can't do that because the pushers are 180 degrees apart. You can't get two pushers at the same time down at the bottom. Hey, maintenance. We can do anything we want to. All right. So here's what I was looking at. Let's look at this now. Right here. This was my aha moment. When I looked at these two coaches right here, when I looked at both coaches, there's a top one, the bottom one, and these two sets of spoons. This was my aha moment. This is when I looked at it and I'm like, boom, I figured it out. Because see how this spoon is tilted down, the other spoon is tilted up? They should both be in the up position. You should be reclined at that point on your back looking up. Whether you're on the top spoon or the bottom spoon, you should be looking pretty much almost straight up the track. You kind of reclined. It's not a 45, but it's like a 60-degree angle depending on the weight because the spoons are off-centered. So you kind of get that spin, but you always kind of right yourself to gravity too. That's an important one. One of the reasons why Intamin's version didn't work so well is because they got the center of gravity to the rider too close to the center of gravity to the spoon, and they spun too much, and that allowed you to like wind up upside down the majority of the time. Not good. It was just one of those things. That was an Intamin first design of their time. You know, that's the first one ever. So they tried it and they got it a little bit off, and then SNS just perfected it from there. So it is what it is. But these two guys have collided. And I was like, you can't collide those things. That's impossible. How would that be possible? Well, let's look into it. Okay, so this is the lifting. This is the coach that's on there. This is one from, I believe this was Adventureland where he took this. It is being lifted up. This is the top set of spoons. Okay, right here, this is the main coach down here in this area. Readjust this. Hopefully I can get all this in the camera view at the same time. But this is the main coach down here, and it's actually being lifted right back in this area. You can't see it. That chain assembly is covered. But this is a bumper. And see, this is the spoon, and then this guy right here, I've heard parks call this different things. One of the things I've heard this referred to in multiple areas was the elephant ear, because it kind of looks like an elephant ear. I know that's what they use the term in over at X at Magic Mountain. I'm not sure if it's a manufacturer's term or just slang, but this elephant ear or this cap prevents you from basically reaching to the side and touching the moving assemblies while it's going. That's a keep your hands and feet away. That's the reason those things are there. So they outline the reach envelope. So that little plastic guard covers everything that you could reach and possibly reach your feet to and all that other stuff. When this guy runs, it does not go past that bumper right there. This is the bumper. This is in case it hits another vehicle that it doesn't collide deeper. So that bumper is at the outside edge of the reach envelope. The lower spoons have the exact same thing. Here's the lower spoons right here. It's got the same elephant ear on the side there, and it's also got the bumper down there at the bottom. So it's also got a bumper. That front bumper and the rear bumper will collide with each other in the event the booster wheels don't slow the train down enough and stop it. Whether a shaft breaks off or something like that. Those are the two surfaces that will actually collide on the train. Now, these things are held on with bolts. You see, there's 1, 2, 3 bolts holding that bumper on. Same with the front. All right, so this is the pusher assembly or the chain attachment up close. These wheels just push on the train. There's nothing crazy that it's like a plate that it sits on. And this is the chain link itself here that it gets onto. And then off to the side of the chain, there's wheels on it. The coach has anti-rollback assemblies. There are actually 2 of them on each coach. And these wheels basically keep the thing suppressed and down as it's running up the lift hill. That's why you don't hear them. But if the assembly takes backwards movement at all, then the dog comes out and drops into the teeth that are on the lift hill. So this is a free spin running, and what I want to do is I want to show you, I just want you to watch as it goes around, watch the spoon spin, and you'll see that those elephant ears don't go outside of those bumpers. The bumpers mark the end of where the elephant ears can turn, so that's your ride envelope, that's your reach envelope. This is a video of the pusher or the chain attachment coming back down. Here it is right here. And then it's going to slow down. And then it comes right here. And then it stops and waits for the coach to go ready under the bottom side of it. I know this is taking a long time, Ryan. Sorry about that. All right, so when you look down the barrel of the coaches, this is, we're looking backwards. The coach would be coming towards the camera in this case. But what you have here is you have your anti-rollback assemblies on this side. These are your collectors to release the restraints. And then these plates right over here, I tried finding another image of these plates because there should be a lot of like brackets and stiffeners around them. But these plates are where those lifting attachments actually push on the other side. There's nothing fancy that they latch into. It is simply just a lifting plate. The 2 sets of road wheels and the track and structure keep everything aligned. So there really is no reason to like make a hook or a pocket for that to sit into. This is a close-up of the back of the coach. This would be the lower side in this particular case, or the reverse side of it. There is this bumper again, and there's a bolt down there holding it on, a bolt here, and a bolt there. So they could be removed and rehab, serviced, NDT'd, whatever you want to call it. Now you're asking yourself, okay, we're building the coach in our head. Why are we doing this? What are you getting at? All right, here's that exact same picture from Coaster Hub that I had before, but this time it wasn't great, but I put it through a little bit of filter and started playing with the contrast, brightness, and all that other stuff. And I wanted to answer which train was being lifted. Because I wanted to know if the front train, this top coach, I should say, I want to know if that top coach was being lifted or the bottom coach was being lifted. Because that kind of tells me part of the story. So when I ran it through and kind of lightened it up as best as I could, it is really hard to see. And I mean really hard to see. If you got lights on and you're in a bright place, you probably can't see it. I hope this turns out well on there. But basically, if you look right here, there's a distortion in the image. I know it's you probably can't see it. I can barely see it myself, and I did the enhancement. But basically, there's a dark outline right where my mouse is, right here, and there is a distortion. There's a lighter spot, kind of rectangular looking, right here in this area. So when I line that up to other photos, hopefully I could fit this all in here. Sorry about everything moving all over the place. I came up with this lower coach down here in the messed up picture is in roughly the same position as this coach over here in my paused video. The pusher or the attachment is just above this beam, and it is that, I believe, that light spot right there on this original video, that this enhanced picture right here. I believe that light spot is just a glimmer of the camera catching the pusher, because the pusher is black and the background is black. But the camera is able to see things our eyes can't. So I believe, because there's that little gray spot there, that is the pusher, telling me that this lower coach was being lifted. Okay. So when you take that into account, it's like, all right, why did these two crash into each other then? Because the bumpers should have prevented that. How did they crash into each other? Well, gonna have to bear with me on this for a little bit. All right, so what I've done is I cut the image out of that one that I just used right here, and I've basically tried to align it size-wise with this coach. So if I bring it down here close to where those two spoons are, but what I'm doing is I'm lining up the rear bumper essentially. So I put that rear bumper right down there. It's like, okay, I got the rear bumpers lined up. So that tells me, because I can't see it on the original, that tells me that the front bumper is right there. I'm like, okay, so now if I duplicate that image and bring that in, that front bumper should be, so I'll do the same thing there, and I'll say that this guy, I'm going to line the front bumper up right at the top, right there, with that guy, roughly, and then the rear bumper should be right there. So I'm going to take the rear bumper on this one and bring it in roughly again and line it up right there, and then what do we see? If we go in a little bit here, we'll see now that this rear bumper and this front bumper can't exist at the same time. One of those things is gone. So I think what happened is, I think on the original, they were having some sort of trouble, and for some reason on this top coach, they took the rear bumper off of the coach. Then they advanced the next coach up against it. So we have the whole thing resting on this one, because if you took, and I looked at those images pretty close to each other, if you took this rear bumper off right here and this front bumper off right here, and then advanced these two coaches together, these two sets of seats on either side would collide with each other, and you definitely have smashed fiberglass, bent metal, and everything. So they knew not to do that. So what they did is they just took this bumper off right here and then advanced this coach forward. Now, why they did that, we still don't know. We don't know why they did this. But my guess is they wanted to try to get the rear coach out of the way of something, whether they're working on something on the lifting chain assembly, booster wheels in the station, I'm not sure. But they basically tried to make that front coach as short as possible and then push the other coach up against it. And then at some point they were like, well, if we could just move these out of the station a little bit, that would solve all of our problems. And then probably, don't know, probably someone went and said, oh, let's just turn the lift hill on and put it in like a maintenance mode or something like that and creep it forward. And then they said, oh yeah, that's a good idea, let's do that. And they switched it into some sort of mode. And the machine at this point was probably screaming at them, hey, you're got all sorts of things out of position. And a lot of ride programs will just let you go, yeah, okay, and continue to do things, because part of the problem when you're in manual mode, that means there's typically a problem. You're there doing something out of the ordinary anyway. If you kept 100% of the safeties in all the time, the manual mode would be useless, because you can't override things that you need to override when sensors malfunction, because a sensor tells you, hey, there's a train right there, but you might be sitting there with a ride full of loaded people going, there's no train there, I just need to advance this. And then in that case, they give you that function in some manual modes to just go, oh, hey, okay, we told you there was a problem and you acknowledge, so you're going to go ahead and move that coach forward. Because I'm there physically in real life going, look, there's no coach there, I could see it, nothing's there, we're going to advance this one forward. So it's a kind of like a conflict of interest in there. The machine wants to keep the ride safe, but once you turn that manual mode key on, some ride control manufacturers are just like, all right, we're going to take down a lot of our safeties. We're going to keep some in place, but not many. That will allow you to manipulate the machine the way you might need to when there's a problem. So I think really what happened on this is that they were having troubles. The email accounts, people that I've seen online talking about it, they have said, yes, the ride went down for like a half hour, 45 minutes, something along those lines before they saw this. And then it's like, okay, so they had a problem, they were doing something, and I believe they tried to use the system to basically push one coach slightly ahead to do something, I'm not sure what. And basically, they ran him up the lift hill. And I'm sure someone was not quite paying attention to something and it just went too far. Instead of going up just a little bit, they went all the way up. Now, what's the repercussion from here? So from here, they have all that weight sitting on that chain. That chain is designed to pull one coach with people up and over the top. It is not meant to pull two coaches up and over the top. So bare minimum, they're going to have to stop and say, is that chain okay now? Because if that chain was not meant for that weight and it could not handle that weight, that means they've essentially catastrophically stretched the chain in theory. And that the entire chain now is going to have to be replaced on that ride before it can operate again. Because a chain snapping and coming back down, all the weight of it inside there can easily open up a trough and come out, and it could seriously hurt somebody or possibly even kill somebody. So they have to, the first thing is like, oh my gosh, is the chain okay? Let's say they contact S&S and they say, this is what happened. We put two coaches on there at one time. Is the chain okay? S&S is probably going to almost come back and say, I don't know what they would say. But let's say yes, the chain's okay. But the lifting attachment to that chain, which is what the coach is lifted on, that lifting attachment plus 5 feet of chain in each direction is going to have to be replaced in order to make this happy. Like, we want 10 feet of chain going in there and a new lifting attachment, plus both of those coaches are going to have to come offline, and they're going to need full NDT now because that stress was not intended. Those bumpers are meant to just go like that, and that's it. Like, not lifting by the bumper, definitely not. In fact, just the act of those two quarterling through that bend at the bottom might have already messed something up. Heck, it could have taken the one that was there and possibly folded it underneath bent sheet metal. So they're probably at a bare minimum going to say, those two coaches, out of there, take them out, full NDT, check everything on them, tear them apart. Those two are done for their annual or whatever. Replace a chunk of chain at a bare minimum. At a maximum, I'm going to think that the same NDT requirements, both of those vehicles come off full NDT, all that stuff, and then I would say the chain has to be replaced. Full chain. both lifting attachments included. So you got to do that whole thing. And then I'm also going to stipulate that while that chain is out, you need to go through and NDT the entire trough where that chain sits inside of to make sure that trough is not deformed from all that extra weight. And I'm going to say that up at the top where it goes over and you have that whole motor assembly up there that's running everything, that you're going to have to NDT all the motor and gearbox mounts up there because you essentially overloaded the lift hill. That could be the downside to the whole thing. It's like, oof, that's a mess. Okay, so how would you recover it from here? Let's talk about recovery. All right, it's the next day. They were probably working on it through the night maybe. What are we going to do to recover this thing? Well, there's not many options for recovery like this. The first one is going to be to continue to push these, assuming that there's something okay, like that top coach is not preventing from running, like all the wheels are intact, but like everything's okay to run for that top coach, then I would say that they would probably just like, well, the damage is done at this point in time. Just run the thing over and probably run that thing all the way to the top, get a couple people up there and make sure that once it's to the top, they slow it down and creep it, and then push that top coach off and just let it go and let it continue its cycle and go all the way around to the bottom. And then once it's down and it's safe in its spot, send the second one. Because remember, you've now seriously violated all the block system on there. Just hold that top one back. I would honestly probably creep it up. And then once it was within 5 feet of crowning on the top there, to where that top coach was about 5 feet to go over, I would go to that lower coach and hook up like a 10-foot chain to it. That way, in case it went up and they couldn't get it to go over for some reason, and they continued to run the chain, at least that chain would pull tight and try to hold the other one back. Like, you don't want both going on that free track at the same time, because then that will be a nasty problem. The other option would be to somehow, and I don't see how to do it, would be to continue the train on the top, or the coach on the top, moving without the bottom one. But because of the way that pusher is hooked into that train, I don't see that happening at all. You can't just let one go and pick the other one up in this case, unless the pusher assembly can come fully out of the vehicle. I'm not sure if it can or not. I don't have the experience with that part. But if it's like a landing pad that you could unbolt and take off, then you could theoretically do that. Then you could, both trains are sitting on their anti-rollbacks right now, both coaches. You can go up to the bottom coach, ratchet both of them up a little bit to give some space, and then you can take the landing plate for that coach off and let that pusher continue to go through to the top coach, and then let it push that one over, and then put that landing plate back on, and then continue to run the chain back around in like manual mode, run it back around until that pusher is back up to that lower coach again, and then send that one up and over. Again, I don't have pictures of those landing plates. I don't know if they are bolt-in. I kind of assume they're bolt-in. I'm not sure. Sometimes manufacturers weld those things in there, though. That's not like, it's not something you can just undo because they wanted it welded inside that thing. It's kind of the way my brain works. I'm like, I think that's more welded, but it could be a bolted assembly inside there. I honestly am not sure on that one. All right, so this was a really weird circumstance, a really weird thing. It took me a while to figure out that they took the bumper or bumpers off of the coaches and then dispatched them both out of there at the same time somehow, because you had to get that first coach out somehow. It probably means they locked the ride out and pushed that first coach out up the lift hill and maybe come along or something, pulled that up enough to move the second coach forward, or maybe the booster wheels that just knocked the thing forward and it was no big deal. If that's the case, I'd have to ask the question, does that first coach have like its brake fins on it? Like if we sent it around, would it stop? I would hope the crew would tell me, like, oh, by the way, there's no brake fins on there, so you can't send it around. Because that would be another disaster by itself. Alright, if you like to start a video, like, subscribe, do all that stuff downstairs, comment, share. It does help me out. I do appreciate it. Not the way I was intending to spend Sunday, but it is what it is, right? Something that's definitely weird that once I started looking into it, is like, oh yeah, this has video written all over it. So let me know what your thoughts are. I'm very curious to see what happens from here. Probably you won't hear anything since nobody was on it. It was during testing. And there was no injury or anything, but they definitely messed up 2 coaches. Like, this is, I believe rides like this only have 4 coaches-ish to start with. So at least half the ride's capacity is down. If the other 2 coaches were working, they have at least half their capacity back. But if those were in refurbishment, that means the ride's down until all that stuff is fixed. I'm Ryan the Ride Mechanic. If you want to contact me, you can either just leave comments down there, or you can email me at ryantheridemechanic@yahoo.com. Stay off the air gates. Bye.